Alright, hi everyone. So our last lesson for the week here on democracy and on government in Athens. Again, so important for the lessons that you'll be learning next year, all year in 8th grade civics. This is really that beginning foundation. We'll continue it during this Greek unit, and then we get into Rome, and we talk a great deal about how Rome impacted the United States government in its development as well. So today we've talked during the week about how Athenian government evolved, how it changed over time, and how they settled on what they believed was the perfect form of government, which was democracy. And then we jumped deep into what their democracy looked like, how it functioned logistically, and now we will examine sort of how that democracy impacted ours and how it's changed. From how democracy in our version in the United States, how that version of democracy has changed from the version that the ancient Greeks used. And there are a few reasons for that. So let's jump into it. So today, the United States simply, for one thing, is just too large of a country to have everyone meet in one place and vote on a hill outside like they did in ancient Athens. So in this last election, 80 million people voted for the Democratic Party, and another, I think it was 72 million plus, voted for the Republican Party. That's over 150 million Americans that voted in the last election. There's no space, indoors or out, that can house that many people at one time. Okay, so because this country, and also the population of this country is a major issue, but also the sheer size of the country is a major issue. We're talking about a city-state in ancient Greece called ancient Athens. Now we have this massive country with 50 states, various territories. It spans coast to coast by 3,000 miles. There's another couple thousand miles away. You have Hawaii. It's just logistically too large. And that is why our democracy is different. We have what is called a representative democracy. This is also referred to as a republic. And those will be your last two vocab words for the week. Okay? A representative democracy is what we are. You can't have everyone in the same place. And that qualifies us as a republic. So the first word is representative democracy. Before we get into the definition of it, very easily, let's say that on this team in my let's say my homeroom, we pick two students to go have a meeting with Mr. Williams and Miss Russo every week to talk about things on our team that we like, that we want to improve. Mr. Williams simply doesn't have enough space in his office for all of the kids in my homeroom or all of the kids in my team. So we pick two people from each homeroom to go down and have that conversation with Ms. Russo and Mr. Williams in the office. Those two people that you choose, that you elect from each homeroom, are your representatives. They represent what you want. They don't go down there and selfishly say, well, the team wants this and this, when it's really what they want. They represent what the will of the entire group wants. That is what representative democracy is. So it is a form of government where citizens elect, which means vote, choose, a form of government where citizens elect officials to represent them in the government. And that's exactly like if we pick two people from each homeroom. Mr. Williams' office could hold 8 students. Not during COVID times, of course, but you know what I mean. They could go down there, they could have the conversation, they could come back up, and Mr. Williams would receive from those 8 students, 2 per homeroom, 4 homerooms, 8 kids total. They would bargain with him, they would talk to him, and he would discuss with them what they wanted and his thoughts on what they wanted. They would represent what you wanted them to talk about. These elected officials then meet to make the country's laws. And they discuss ways to enforce them as well, what those laws would be, what would happen as a consequence if you break those laws. This is what happens in our country. So, for example, in the United States, Americans elect senators and representatives to Congress. And this is the body that makes the country's laws. Americans don't simply vote on each law that Congress passes, but they do trust their representatives to vote for them in the way that they would want to vote for that law or for whatever it is that they're discussing. So we elect people in all 50 states. Every state elects 2 senators. The senators report to the Senate. This is something based on Roman government, and we'll talk about that in a few months. So each, no matter what the size, physical size or population of the state is, every state elects just 2 senators, and that means 50 states, 2 senators per state. The Senate is made up, therefore, of 100 people, and those 100 senators represent the will of what their voters from the state want, and that's called their constituents. Okay, so this is representative democracy. Big fancy word attached to democracy, but really focus on the first 3 letters, R-E-P. Rep, to represent, right? Just like, what's a republic? R-E-P. It's where people represent to you. It's a form of government where you are represented, or you are representing the public. Think of it that way, okay? And so it looks like this. Ancient Athens used democracy that was like the perfect form of democracy, where it's direct democracy. And this is where the people are voting directly on the laws and the rules, and therefore the punishments. That's because there's a small enough number of people where they can vote directly on these things. So ancient Athens used direct democracy. We can't use that in this country. It's too large. We use representative democracy. Okay? And so this is sort of like direct democracy is when I asked in my lesson on Monday, I told you, or Tuesday, I told you, I'm going to buy you lunch. Do you want Wendy's or do you want McDonald's? And everyone had a direct right to vote straight up. Raise a hand. Tell me what you want. You're not picking someone to vote for what you eat for lunch. You're voting for what you want for lunch. You are directly voting on what you wanted for lunch, or you are directly voting on if we're saying, should you have homework every day? I ask you to raise your hand and vote. That's a direct vote. You're not picking someone to go into a different room with me and discuss it. You're telling me straight up what you want. In this country, not like ancient Athens, which used direct democracy, but in the United States of America, we use representative democracy. And this means that the laws and the rules that are discussed are not voted directly on by the people. The people are directly picking their elected representatives. You pick someone who you think is going to represent what you want. They're going to represent your best interests. That elected representative then represents the people that voted for them, and they go and discuss the laws and the rules because there's just too many people in the country. This means, again, that we are a republic. Representatives of the public, representation, republic. And so a republic is when power is held by the people, and that power is the right to vote and choose, and that power is then vested and handed over to those elected officials. And the cool thing here is if you don't like how an elected official is representing you, then you just don't re-elect them the next time that they're up for election. And there are laws that hold them accountable as well. And so then the other piece of a republic is that this tells you where the power is held by the people that vote means elected, they're voted for officials, and then there is usually an elected, a chosen president as a leader. As you know, we do in this country. We just had our election. So let's have a side-by-side representation of this. Democracies then and now. Athenian direct democracy as a review. All citizens, which we now know means free men, met as a group to debate and vote directly on every issue. There was no separation of power. This means citizens created and enforced laws and acted as judges. Each citizen did this. Okay? Only free male citizens could vote, not the women, not slaves, not children, not foreigners. In American representative democracy, to review, elected representatives are chosen, they're elected, then they debate and vote on those issues. There is a separation of powers. What this means, and we'll get more into this with ancient Rome, this means that we have 3 branches of government in this country. One branch is the legislative branch, where it's Congress, and that's the Senate and the House of Representatives, and those are the people that are elected to make laws. They only make the laws, though. The executive branch is the president, and he determines what those laws will be, and then the judicial branch is where it's made up of the judges and the courts, And this is where they determine if it's going to become law, what the consequence for that law will be if you break it, how to enforce it. Okay? And male and female citizens have the right to vote when they're over the age of 18 and have not committed a felony in this country, as long as they are a citizen of this country. And you can become a citizen in a few ways. First, by being born to American citizens. Second, to be born on American soil. Third, to be naturalized, which means to come from a different country, and you take a naturalization test. Okay, and if you pass that test, you receive your citizenship, and citizenship gives you the right to be a citizen, and therefore, over the age of 18, you have the right to vote.